I'm the director of Wink. And with me are Adam Cardon, David Marino, Andrew Ochoa, E.L. Losada, and Amy Argyle. And this is Neil Konigsberg, the author. So, does anybody have any questions, any observations?
Yeah,
Yes.
I've got a question. We're very active with PFLAG, so we're seeing a lot of the transgender, non-binary. A good friend of ours has a daughter that just came out as gender non-binary. But what I always find talking to kind of my contemporaries, it seems like the younger generation has a very easy time just kind of dealing with, okay, that's just the way it is, no problem. When I talk to my contemporaries, I find a lot of, it's just a lot of confusion trying to wrap your heads around it. So what I'd like to ask kind of all of you is, when you talk to somebody from your parent generation, whatever, the older generation, what is the best way you find to explain this?
Let's start with an easy.
Who wants to take this very easy
I
question?
think Link should talk about it.
Andrew?
All right. The best way to approach this kind of subjects is taking the stand of the other person first, instead of yours. So when I was still identifying as a lesbian, I was working on a cruise ship, and I found myself talking to this very, very conservative Ukrainian crew of guys, and one of them was like, What do you like, girls? You girl, why? And I was like, okay, how do I do this? I looked at a guy, kind of chubby guy, very hairy, and I was like, who would you prefer to wake up with and smell every part of their body? That guy over there or that chick over there? And he's like, the chick. And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. And he was like, oh, I get it. Just try to make him feel your shoes. It's difficult, but we have to make that effort. And I'm sorry I took too much time.
I think that's part what Andrzej started with is crucial, is understanding that they have had said parameters that they have spent their entire life in, and everything fit because everything could fit. So now that it's not, whether they have a judgment on it, a particular moral judgment, attachment to it or not, the world made sense in these parameters, and now everything is kind of being broken down, and lines are getting blurred, and things are, and they're just, it's a different world, and it's having the patience to look at it from that perspective, even though it directly affects us, as a society now, is understanding that's where the world was. That's what they knew, That's the way that
I talked to some people about it, and I had to learn about it myself. And what I found is how wonderful that so many of this generation, they're just talking about it. No judgment. No, they just talk about this. Of course, there's always a few, but as a general rule, they just talk about it. Now I go back to when I was that age. You made yourself fit in a mold, and chances are you lived a very unhappy life if you continued it. When they got to that level of which then would have been confusion of why don't I fit in, I'm just so excited that this generation doesn't have to go through any of the crap that our generation had to go through. So if that
We have a whole
helped them.
generation to educate them.
Right.
That's the hard part.
And
That's the challenge.
yeah, exactly. And a generation of tolerance building. I mean, it took a lot. It's still a lot more to go. A lot more to go.
the kids don't know how to think.
When I was your age, I had to walk 3 miles to school.
Uphill both ways.
But I have to say, what I applaud is that when I met Andrik, he presented who he was. And so I never once had difficulty because of the strength and the honesty that was presented to me, and that was very moving to me. So
Actually, because of that, it became, we actually had some difficulties in the thing with the gender pronoun, that we kept calling Wink he,
Yeah.
referring to Wink as he,
Yeah.
because Andrik presented
It was
himself
mostly
as,
me.
you know. Okay, I wasn't gonna say anything, but yes, Adam did a terrible job. Adam
And thank you for making it the royal we, but that was too many phone calls and texts about that.
I have a
Yeah.
little story, is that
Don't
the other
stress.
night, closing up, and I was still here, and the only person I thought upstairs was Andrick, and it was this very pretty lady in her twenties, waiting, and I said, "Are you waiting? And who are you waiting for?" And I was pretty sure nobody was there but Andrick. She said, "I'm waiting for them." No. Them was Andrick. So the pronoun, you know, it's just,
Neil, can you talk a little bit about the moments and what led you to sit down and begin writing this play?
yeah, well, what I say is that we're all talking about, you know, sort of cavalier about the freedom of these kids and the freedom of this and the freedom of that. The truth of the matter is that what I wanted to do is concentrate on one kid and how connection and love could change a life. And because we're talking in general terms, these organizations like Replenishment Hall and a place called Ali Fournay, if you're reading the program, which I was on the board of and whatever, these kids are still having tremendous problems because you've got to take a person who is fragile in a world that's mostly like Peter Kane and thinking that way, still dealing with homelessness and being thrown out of homes and Christianity, you know, not accepting them. All the things, the delicate things that come into a human brain. Forget about, you know, what we're talking about now is very trendy. But then behind the statistics and the trends are human beings. So I thought, like, to put these two people together, it all takes place in a day and a half. You could say, well, how could this all happen? In Hollywood, this could happen. You know, people just, as somebody says, it's a runaway train. So I thought, like, the juxtaposition, I had to figure out, because I worked with these kids, and I was in an art class like this in New York, and I took to one kid that I wasn't sure whether it was a boy or a girl, whatever, who seemed to be interested in a lot of the same things I was interested in, you know, film, theater. So I went to the social worker and I said, I'd like to take, first of all, I'd like to know if this is a boy or a girl. And he said, I'm not going to tell you, it's irrelevant, we protect them here, and it's none of your business. And I said, okay, that's fine, but I think I would like to take this person to the movies, you know, in New York City. Just do it. So I said, the social worker said, we don't want you to do that. I said, why not? And he said, well, at least every 6 months, we're a privately owned organization. We rely on funds. We don't want to get involved with the law or police or whatever. We have to get rid of a pedophile who has joined this organization to go have sex with these kids. Or, that's number one. Number two, you live on the Upper East Side, you want to take this kid to the apartment and have to call me the next day and say that you're missing 2 watches or your wallet, then what does it do? You know, so that, you know, it's a very slippery slope that this play is on, this runaway train. And so that's how it came together. I've spent many years in showbiz. I know all these people. And I, you know, some is exaggerated and some is this and that, but I know all these people. So that's the reason.
Do you have any plans to take the show to some less tolerant areas around the country?
I don't know. I mean, it was produced in New York a year and a half ago in a very kind of different production. The person playing Wink was a very talented young actor who's in Harry Potter now on Broadway, but he was a guy playing it. It was just a different dynamic, and now it's here. And yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to take it somewhere else, I'm open. I'm a writer. I want my work done.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I'm obviously from an older generation now. I'm happily 51. But, but I guess my question is that I'm so touched by the openness of this story, because I remember moving to LA when I was about 26, and I'm Italian. It was the era where everyone wanted to be hairless. And I felt so uncomfortable because I was this hairy Italian kid, like Gold or something. And just feeling, it's not so much about the gender, but just the feeling of just absolutely not fitting some kind of a mold. And I found myself focusing in the story on the actual question, girl or boy. And you kind of have to come back to the point of that not mattering, I guess, to be very accepting of gender fluidity, right? Is that, I mean, I guess my question is that do you choose to tell people, I mean, how much does gender matter, I guess is the question. Or I don't want to say genitalia, but is that too bold of a question to ask? Or?
The question was for me?
Yeah.
To be honest, they're very different things that form your identity.
Okay.
Pretty much you sitting right here, right now, the way you're sitting down, that contributes to create your identity, how people will remember you after you die. Because we create identity every single day, every single moment. So, once we get that, how is that going to fit a mold? Ever. It's just about, because I try to be a girl and I try to be a guy. I try both ways and I realize it just doesn't work for me. It's really about being true to yourself. It's really about, I realized that the femininity that I was fighting so much was also part of who I was. So at the end of the day, genitalia can mean something if you let it. If at the end of the day people see who you are and you're true to yourself and you're so comfortable, you become the best version, the strongest and the most like shiny version of yourself. That's why it's so important to be honest to yourself. Yes, there's gotta be the things that are masculine, there's gotta be things that are feminine, but anyone can have access to those so they can express themselves. It changes your life. It changes, you feel like you're capable of doing anything in the world. We treat this as I'm about to finish, I promise. We treat this as a kind of superficial social matter, but if anyone in this life was able to be themselves, I promise you, there will be a lot less violence, there will be a lot less hate, a lot less, more productivity, everything will change. We will live in a different world.
It's beautifully said.
Thank you.
There's a,
No, I just want, go ahead.
just this, when we just really think about, we all are masculine and feminine. Like, that's just our nature. We are made of masculine and feminine traits. Everybody has it. And this idea of like, I'm sure everybody's heard of this idea of breaking down this idea of toxic masculinity, of like this idea of what it means to be a man and a female. But like, we constructed that. Like, we came up with those ideals. But like Andrick said, if we just look into ourselves and say, okay, how we identify really isn't, and this is Eckhart Tolle, like how we identify is not by, I have boobs and a vagina. It's not by the things that we see. It's what's within us as a human being. So when we start to look at and break down those ideals of what society has created, of what our identity is, we don't really, like, who we are is not what I'm looking at you and who you are, like, it's your heart, it's your soul, it's who you present as a human being rather than this physical body that we've come into, because it shifts, like Andrick said, it shifts and changes, and we have the ability as a human being to use our mind to just dig in and just be ourselves, and whatever that is, whatever you find for yourself that is, and that identity for yourself, then it goes beyond what the construct of what we create as a human being, because we have to make ourselves feel more comfortable. But there was something that I wanted to touch on from before, of this idea of like, people have been like this for years and years and years and centuries. There have been gay, there have been, like, it's not something that just popped up like in the last 20 years or 100 years. Like, people have been this way since probably the creation of human beings. And it's just our being open to understanding that it's evolution, it's change, and life is always changing, creation is always changing.
That was beautiful, Valerie.
I just wanted to say that, again, all these thematic things are great, and I'm thankful for everybody's, different levels of interpretation. There is a story, though, better or worse, whatever. So I created Peter as a character to kind of symbolize, when I first met Wink was saying to me, the outside world is Peter. The outside world is Trump. I might have said but intolerance. I gotta know, else you destroy. So I wonder if that came across.
Oh, Joey's.
Was a wonderful performance. Likable.
But we can all see ourselves in his performance to some degree, just feeling like somehow you have to know that, I hate to say the secret, but those of us, from the 60s, 70s, 50s, whatever, we grew up with a lot of secrets, and it's such a powerful production. I'm so moved by it.
What did you think of the surprise at the wall at the end? His work, that's the chalk. Kind of amazing. Our production designer came up with that and spent a weekend in here drawing the whole thing from top to bottom. To just show
I like something that you said, that we grew up with a lot of secrets. Because he says, what's the I for? It's intersex. It's for hermaphrodite. And he said, well, it's way too much information. And I said, well, it's honest. That's the way that things are now. That to me is one of the most important lines in the play. It's the way that things are now.
Right.
I understand that you came from this world and it might be difficult to grasp, but honesty, like you can be vulnerable, you can be yourself today, and you will be celebrated for that.
Some of the feeling of Wink, the character, comes from not knowing he got programmed by anybody. We don't know about his parents, we don't know about his upbringing. And so much of our problems, or my problems, come from my programming.
Yes.
Right.
Everyone.
Yeah. So, Wink would make a fabulous parent, for instance, character Wink. To be totally accepting of the kind of person he or she wants to become.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're not going to get that kind of progress in humanity, I don't think.
I think that's probably one of the most important things that society has to understand, is that we all have been programmed.
Right.
And so once we understand that, and our lovely parents, we are all programmed. So once we really start to tap into that idea and go, okay, so where was I? Who was I before the programming started?
So if I can make a comment, one of the things I noticed when we talk about programming is that even if we look at our language, and there's many languages where you have feminine words, masculine words, neutral words, we don't necessarily have that, and we still use the his and the her. So I'd like to get your take on how critical is it for our language to change as a first step in changing that program? Because if we keep the language with the he and her and his, that's so ingrained from a small child on. It's going to be
And it's not easy.
Right.
It's not
It wasn't easy during the rehearsal process.
Even through the rehearsals, we kept saying he, she, it, where, who, what.
They're all
It's not,
fine.
it's Wink. It's because we are so programmed to that pronoun when talking about, he just asked a question, It's not easy. It's not gonna be an easy step.
I'm just gonna say this. I think it's crucial because Wittgenstein said, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. If you try to explain something without words, it doesn't match your brain. So we need to get into that thing. There is one thing that I just knew about because they was messing with my brain. So it's X and he and the E. So it's like C. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's like a new pronoun. X E. So it's kind of interesting. We're getting there, and I'm pretty sure somebody's gonna
Part
come up
though
with
is there's
something.
like 5 different sets of these pronouns. For us old folks, you need to come up with.
Question over in the corner.
Or I think think another thing is like, let's also bring down the sensitivity of it. Like, let's just be people.
Right.
Let's just
There
be
you
people
go.
and say
Right.
some. If I
Yeah.
call he, a she, and she, and, you know, like, what do they want to be called? Let's just be respectful.
Let's
And
let's
just
make
leave it at that.
mistakes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Let's allow each other to make mistakes.
All
and
right,
grow
the
together.
lady in the corner.
Sorry.
I have a question that I'm not sure if you like as much as the other questions, but I am a Brit, so we tend to do these things. So, yes, you're all correct that we have to be super empathetic towards the fact that there are many forms of sexual beings on this planet. However, should we not also be a little bit empathetic towards the programmed people who don't understand that, who who literally, it's like suddenly telling someone the sky is not blue, that
Yeah.
you've been told your entire
Mhm.
life. It is pink, and you have to accept the pinkness of it to
Yeah.
your core. And even though the majority of the people that you've grown up with still tell you it's blue and want you to say it's blue, you now have to say it's pink. The only reason I'm saying it's not because I believe in that, it's because I have parents and I have generations and I've travelled around the world to very intolerant places like the Middle East, and I just came back from the Middle East actually, and the discussion we're having today would not be even possible, which is terrible. But it took me about the first week and a half of being there to stop saying in my head, I can't believe I just said that, I can't believe I just said that, whether it was racism, sexism, homophobia, I mean it was relentless. And then something else switched inside me, and I started feeling weirdly empathetic to the way and reasons that they were having those conversations, because that is their entire world. And if they say differently, they will be persecuted, and they just don't know any differently.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, I'm not saying they're right. I don't think anyone's right or wrong. You're right, we're programmed from birth. We're born free and the way we love, and then every day something new gets put into us. But should we not, I don't know, tolerate the intolerance?
That's kind of what I was referencing with the gentleman. This is like understanding that they've never had to ask those questions. So their world is being rocked. So we can approach it with the compassion of like, I've been dealing with this my entire life.
Right.
You are just dealing with this now.
I'm not saying that they're right, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right,
It's just
right,
it's
right.
having empathy, and that's
It's
how you have a
understand
conversation.
How hard it is for them to understand that this is okay.
Right.
Well, I will share a story with you. I have a friend who is transitioning currently from a male to a female. And I knew this friend as a man. And then, life happens and he chose to transition to a female. And in the transition, sometimes my pronouns would slip. I would refer to her as him because I was used to the man that I knew. And I knew each time I used a male pronoun, I was hurting her feelings. And it was eating me up inside. And then one day I had to have the conversation to say, please extend the tolerance you're asking to me. Because it's very new to me. And it doesn't mean I don't love you, but it's an adjustment.
Education?
Yeah.
Just to touch a bit further on the writing, because I actually really enjoyed the agent's role a lot, mostly because I think a part of all of us in the room was also saying, I just want to know. And I'm sure this is a very tolerant audience, but I think it's really normal in a way and very natural to have that curiosity justified. Not because you want to then point a finger at the person and say, well, you're wrong for being that. But I think there is something inside us that wants to know not even just gender, like other things about human beings, that we want to know what's being presented to us, that curiosity. I actually really got it. I mean, I know he was doing it for the faces, like it was quite aggressive, but I think we all have that inside us. We all do.
Yeah, it's very human.
Yeah.
It's very human to have curiosity. To the point when we damage other people's feelings, when your priorities are not in order, that's when things get a little off, I would say. But if it's just a matter of looking for knowledge, I think in a healthy way, it should be very much welcome. Whenever somebody tells you, I'm not gonna tell you, all right, that's it. Because
When we can stop being scared of what we don't know, the transition will be so much easier. But so many people are so scared of something they don't know because they can't control it.
Do you think it's just scared? Or just, it's like, sometimes it's also like, well, what's the big deal if you just tell me if it's not a problem? There is that kind of, it's like, it feels like someone's trying to maintain power.
Yeah,
Over the information.
they want to control
But
it.
then the other person wants the power from them. I want you to give me the power of your secret.
Yeah, and everybody wants to put people in a
So essentially, it
mold.
is a power struggle. You want to withhold something from me, and I want to know.
But
Well,
the
it's not.
time someone's making a point that they want to withhold it, that puts that question in the room. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but it is their
I
right.
specifically don't want to tell anyone my gender, is putting that question so massively into it versus
Right.
you not saying anything at all.
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
that might be the case, but we also gotta think in terms of, am I willing to have power over your life or you over mine? And people are adjusting the idea that if I want to live my life and ask you to recognize me as non-binary, I'm not asking you to change your gender, to go through any surgery, to change your life at all. I'm asking you to recognize what I've done with my life. Not
Yes.
changing yours.
One, I've been working with PFLAG over 25 years when my son came out as gay. And it's been a real education for me because when I first started, it was like, okay, there's some people that are lesbian and some people that are gay. And then transgender came into the picture. So each step of the way, it's been a new education. Well, one of the biggest things that's happened to me in just the last couple of years, and when I met Andrique at UCLA education for the second year medical students, it's another step in that, you know, if you know someone's genitalia, that does not tell you their gender. And everybody that is even, there's more than transgender. Just because someone maybe is transitioning from male to female, or some people do it back the other way, there is another class or other groups in there that some days that they want to be gender fluid. And I remember seeing some documentary on TV, and they had this beautiful young-looking woman up in San Francisco, and she was explaining, I'm not having surgery. I'm keeping the genitalia I was born with because some days I feel like dressing masculine. But some days I feel like being more of a man. Other days I feel like I'm more feminine and I want to be feminine. So I don't want to have surgery to define me as one or the other. I want the right to be whatever I feel like right now.
And that it's another
And so
identity on
that's
its own.
another section of
You're gonna have
it.
to add
It's
another
not
letter.
just lesbian, straight, gay, or transgender. There's a whole bunch of a fluid variety in there.
We love boxes, but at the end of the day, we'll
Yes.
end up making a box for each human. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And the boxes go away.
Yeah.
You bring up a very good point about the boxes because in our involvement with PFLAG over the years, one thing I've noticed with the younger people who are coming in, and I say this all the time, they do not want to be put into a box. That's the difference. Our generation and previous generations always were willing to be put into some sort of a box.
You want it to be.
Oh,
That's
we're
how
happy.
you that's how you
We're
gotta accept
happy.
it.
We're comfortable in our
Yeah.
box. But there's two other words that came up a lot. And it's the idea of equality and like power and power struggles. And I see this whole shift with gender identity has a lot to do with the issues of power. One person having power over the other, one gender having power over the other. And what I believe is happening is there truly is going to be a shift where, like I always think, why when we write a business letter, do we need to, and it's a letter coming to us or we're writing to somebody, why do we even need to use a he or she pronoun? If we're doing business with an individual, we're doing business with an individual. It shouldn't matter whether it's a she or a he. And I believe that as language evolves, and I'm seeing this with younger people, and I can only speak of the English language, but we will move away from he and she, and there's going to be some kind of a gender-neutral pronoun that we will just use in general. The same way that we used to use Miss and Mrs., and now everyone uses Ms. I think it's inevitable because that's what our young people are asking of us, because they are much more driven to feel that everybody is an equal in society. And I just want to go back to the idea of other languages too. We don't realize how enmeshed it is in other languages. As somebody who speaks more than one language, the idea that an inanimate object, the table could be feminine and a chair could be masculine or whatever, it's just so deeply rooted right into our language. And these changes don't happen overnight. I applaud the fact that here in Hollywood, here in the theater, here, this subject has been portrayed in the theater, because I have seen that the greatest shifts that have happened around the world are due to portrayals of characters in film, television, and in theater. And of course, this is probably the center around the globe for these things to be produced and come out across the globe. And it's amazing the influence, and don't underestimate the influence of what you're doing and how it impacts us globally.
This was the whole reason I was thrilled to direct Neil's play, because it promotes this exact discussion. And that you all were, with us and willing to speak your minds means the world to us. I think I can speak on our behalf.
The sad part is that you have the best of the most open-minded people.
No one said it wasn't.
And I say that because we realize at PFLAG that when we get families coming, for help at PFLAG, we're getting probably the top 3 to 5% of people who have an openness and a willingness to come and talk about issues of gender identity or sexual orientation. My frustration is, it's how do you reach that bottom 10% who would never think to come to anything like this,
Right.
And as you said, somebody said earlier, we are in a bubble here in Hollywood and in LA, but what about this other
That was a
parts?
pointed question.
We'll take one more question, then we have to wrap it up, unfortunately.
You bring this to other parts of the country, we burn it to state.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
I just sort of found it interesting talking about keeping people sort of in boxes or whatever. Is that I don't know if you did this on purpose or maybe not, but when you had the PR person, the male that was sick and he came, then at the end he came out
Kidney
with,
stone.
that was on blue paper and hers was on pink paper.
And hers was
Was
discarded.
that deliberate or was that?
That's
Thank you very much, that was deliberate.
More programming.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here for coming to see me tonight.